Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you apply to a particular school being highlighted in a given episode, you should listen to all of them, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Don't forget to visit our website, www.collegeadmissionstalk.com, or the show notes of each episode to access the alphabetical list of all the colleges available with the related audio link to the right of each school. The alphabetical list provides you with on-demand access to all of the episodes so that you may listen whenever you wish. And if you want to receive links to episodes before they are released on the podcast, along with other related resources, please fill out the email opt-in form also available on our website and in the show notes of each episode. Lastly, please email me with any questions or comments at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Marissa Strominger, who's the New York Fairfield County Regional Admissions Representative at the University of South Carolina. Marissa, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I am great, John. Thank you for having me. I am super excited to chat all things about the college admissions process and about the University of South Carolina. How are you? How's your summer?
I am doing great. Happy to have you, especially because I know that so many students from the Northeast region, so many more students, I should say, are applying to the University of South Carolina. I also want to reference the fact that back on episode 24, we did have one of your colleagues on. So if anyone out there listening to this is really interested in the University of South Carolina, in addition to hearing this conversation, which I know is going to be awesome with Marissa, please check out episode 24 as well. So Marissa, let's get right to it. How long have you been in admissions and how did you end up in such a position?
Yeah, so I have actually been working in admissions for about 3 years. I have worked in both undergraduate and graduate admissions on the MBA side of things. I previously worked for a small private niche institution called Babson College in Massachusetts before doing a little bit of private college advising before joining the team at the University of South Carolina. But I did have a little bit of a prior life before hopping into admissions. And before that, I worked in marketing and corporate communications. Did that for about 4 years, but truthfully didn't feel personally fulfilled by my positions. In exploring other career paths, I actually found a mentor that had previously worked in college admissions and made his way to the corporate side. So we did a little flip flop there. But he made me believe that this work could be a really good fit for my personality and passions. And truthfully, he wasn't wrong. Now that I am in it, I remember being in college thinking that working at an institution was such a cool job, but I had no idea how people actually landed in these positions. And now here I am.
Well, that's awesome. And obviously, the University of South Carolina is so lucky to have you, as are we, on this podcast episode. Now, Marissa, I know about so many of your popular programs, academically speaking, such as business, the sciences, education, nursing, just to name a few. But I was curious, what are some unique aspects of campus life at the University of South Carolina? And what are some of your most popular extracurricular opportunities available to your students?
That's a great question, John. Obviously, academics are going to be a huge part of the decision process, but you should absolutely also consider how you are going to fit as an individual, both professionally, personally, extracurricularly. And with the school the size of the University of South Carolina, there is truly something for everybody. We have over 27,000 students here on campus, and each one of them has found their interest and their passions. But I would love to start off with chatting about sports for a moment because we are coming off of a huge women's basketball national championship win from this spring. We are in the SEC, or the Southeastern Conference, for those maybe not familiar, and we do have 19 Division One teams. There is a lot of pride in our sports programs here. And for those of you not familiar, our mascot is Cocky. He is a gamecock, and for those of you also not aware, that is a fighting rooster, something I had to teach myself when I joined the team. But outside of sports, students can really explore many aspects of our campus life at a day-long campus-wide student organizations fair that takes place at the beginning of both the fall and the spring semester. This is a fantastic way to check out all of the 650 plus, I say plus because it truthfully grows every year, organizations on campus, meet its members, figure out how they can get involved during their time at USC, whether it's finding a love for the arts, the outdoors, serving others. Getting involved on campus can really enhance a student's experience at USC and truthfully all other campuses as well. In addition to that clubs and organizations fair, we have an online resource called Garnet Gate, which is an online portal home to all of our student organizations. And this allows students to search things within their interests, but also track their involvement and learn a lot more about campus events. I also briefly want to mention our Greek life presence on campus, which is certainly a unique aspect of campus life not offered at every institution. We have more than 8,500 students that are a part of our fraternity and sorority life here on campus, which equates to about 30% of our student body. We have 47 organizations on campus and a beautiful Greek village that is located next to our Strom Thurman Wellness and Fitness Center. It is a beautiful and very active part of campus for those of you lucky enough to go visit. And while they host social events, they're also heavily involved in the local community. They host their own philanthropic events each year, and each chapter also supports dedicated causes. And during the 2023 calendar year, so just closing out last year, uh, more than 203,000 dedicated hours of service were committed by our fraternity and sorority life members, and more than $1.3 million were donated to a variety of causes by that community as well. So while there's so much fun going on there as well, there's also a lot of meaningful connection happening within the community from our Greek life presence. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are also ranked as having the number one first year experience among public institutions. This ranking is truly a testament to our University 101 program, which serves as an international model for first year programs. U101, which we call it here at USC, provides a strong foundation for students that are transitioning into college life and has been proven to increase graduation and retention rates among students. It is the single largest course offering that we have here at USC. And while it is required, it is truly an amazing experience, and students walk away with many new friends and a class that becomes family.
Well, that's an amazing overview. Let me just summarize a little bit. 27,000 students with, as you put it, and I quote, something for everyone. That includes 19 Division One athletic teams, 650 plus student organizations, Greek life with 8,500 students involved. That's sororities and fraternities. And I love how you talked about the fact that your Greek life, your sororities, and your fraternities really get involved with a lot of humanitarian efforts on your campus and in your outer community. And I love that you talked about the fact that you're number one in the first year experience for public institutions. And you mentioned your campus and how beautiful it is, not only on the campus itself, but in the surrounding area. So, Marissa, visiting campus, of course, is so important if you could do it to help determine fit. So, if a student is fortunate enough to visit, what are some of the must see areas on your campus and off? And what are some examples of really good questions that students can ask to help them determine whether or not the University of South Carolina is the right fit for them?
Absolutely. I agree. Visiting campus is so important to determine campus fit, and it truthfully should be an integral part of the college decision making process. When I think of the must see areas on campus, I immediately want to start with the horseshoe. If you Google the University of South Carolina, it's probably going to be one of the first photos that pops up. At one end are gates welcoming you to campus, and at the other end is our visitor center. There are gardens, the admissions office, a student run restaurant, the president's house, so many crucial aspects to life and culture on USC, live on the horseshoe, not to mention the school spirit in this area is usually very high and something that can be tangibly felt when you walk through. Next, I would say is the Russell House, which is home to our student union. It is home to various study spaces. It is home to student services, the bookstore, our student mail center, a hair salon, and far too many dining options, such as Panda Express, the Halal Shack, Panera, Chick-fil-A, Einstein's. I'm getting hungry just discussing it, but so much more, and a lot of events take place in the Russell House as well. Another aspect I would say that's important to check out is the Thomas Cooper Library and the reflecting pool or fountain directly in front of it. We have a few libraries on campus, but this is the largest and most prominent one that students would also likely see on their tours. So if you're not able to get on a guided tour, this is absolutely a stop you should make. I also suggest visiting the Darla School of Business, even if you're not interested in studying business. The building is actually turning 10 years old this year, and the facilities are just truthfully stunning. They did a phenomenal job with the building, and it really boasts our international representation if you see the outside of that building. Driving by the stadium to get a feel for where you might be attending sporting events the next few years is also a great idea. You can certainly walk and get your steps in, but it
Hmm.
is a little bit further down the street. And a couple of insider tips that I wanted to share would be to spend some time sitting on the back patio of the South Carolinian State Museum
Hmm.
as a really unique study space. But at some point, I encourage students to actually pay a visit to the museum itself. There is also a rooftop study space on the top of the School of Information and Communications. And lastly, explore Columbia, specifically the Five Points area, the Vista, and Main Street, which are all very popular areas for our students to hang out in either after a long day of classes or on the weekends. And they're all a very short walk from campus. Ultimately, I really can't harp on the importance on visiting campuses enough. You can only learn so much from online and virtual resources. And while we do our best and how all institutions, put as much information as we can online, if you have the means and the ability to visit a campus, it will greatly help your decision-making process. You never know how you will truly feel until you set foot on campus and you see other students living the life that you could be living for the next 4 years and see where you could be taking classes and truthfully growing as an individual. You asked, what questions should a student prepare to ask? First of all, I think it's important to know there are no such thing as dumb questions in this process. As much as you want to engage with your admissions representative, as many questions as you want to ask, whether it's about campus life, the program, if you have anything with regards to student services that you may need during your time on campus, it is your job to understand all of that before you attend an institution. There are no such things as dumb questions, and we are all here to provide support. If you are from the Fairfield County, Connecticut, or New York audience, I am certainly happy and always open to having a conversation, regardless of what that topic is, to make sure that you understand everything available to you at the University of South Carolina.
Well, that's an amazing overview with so many places to visit on your campus. And I appreciate how you talked about the importance of visiting. And we always say during the podcast episodes, if you can't visit before applying, and there's a lot of reasons why you can't visit. Number one, it might be far, and so it might be cost prohibitive. If cost is not an issue, maybe it's, managing everybody's schedules, your parents, your own schedule to be on campus, especially if you want to visit when school is in session. And I appreciate the tips in terms of, not being bashful to ask any questions, whether it's related to services. Maybe you want to know about the social life. Maybe you want to know about academics, professors, whatever it is, students. It's very important for you to ask those questions to help you determine the fit for that school that you're eventually going to attend. So let's talk a little bit about the application review process, Marissa, because obviously that's something that's so important to so many students and their parents. Can you walk us through your holistic review process and what specific factors and attributes do admissions offices prioritize when evaluating applications?
Of course. And while I'm happy to speak to this answer from the University of South Carolina's perspective, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably learned that its answer is going to be different for every institution that you might apply to. So while we evaluate various aspects of a candidate's application, we are very transparent that a student's academic record and performance will be the most important factor in our evaluation. We don't just look at grades. We also look at the classes a student has taken, the rigor that they have signed themselves up for, and we predominantly pay attention to that core coursework with a strong emphasis on math, science, and English grades. We also will take a look at a student's test scores should you choose to submit them, as well as your high school ranks if your school ranks. Of course, if they don't, there's certainly nothing you can submit. But we also review the personal statement that you have submitted, and we also conduct a holistic review of your extracurricular activities, paying extra attention to any leadership positions you may have held, especially as it pertains to our honors program and our capstone program. I kind of want to jump off of that for a moment and speak to the evaluation process for our honors program, which is also holistic and requires students to submit an additional application. It is not an additional application fee, but it does require students to submit two additional essays, one short answer question, and one letter of recommendation. We do have the nation's #1 public honors college here at the University of South Carolina, so this program remains highly competitive year over year, and these applications go through many rounds of review before honors decisions are made and then released. This year, we received a little over 7,000 applications for the honors program, and the acceptance rate is approximately 10% for that program. However, it is extremely important to know that admission to the honors program and admission to the University of South Carolina are not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely still gain admission to USC and potentially obtain a scholarship while not getting into the honors program. Our capstone program is also another phenomenal program that students can be invited into. It is not an application process, but depending on the leadership qualities that we might see through your application, we might extend you an offer to join our capstone program, which is a 2-year program here at the University of South Carolina, focusing on professional development and leadership.
Well, we appreciate that. I love how you talked about your number one factor in your application review. You were very clear. It's academic performance. And again, we talk about it a lot on the podcast episodes. Students, they are looking to see how it is that you will perform on their campus. And the best indicator of that is how you did in high school. The other thing that you mentioned are all the extracurricular activities, because in addition to wanting to see that you could handle the work once you're on their campus, they want to see the type of community member that you're going to be. Now, I love that you talked about your capstone program. You mentioned your honors college. And the honors college, you said, had over 7,000 applications with about a 10% acceptance rate. Now, you mentioned that there's some additional essays that need to be submitted for the honors college. So, Marissa, I was just curious, what are some of the things that you're looking for in those essays that you can't find in other parts of the application?
Of course. So, the personal statement is really intended to be something that you want to share with us. However, the prompts that we provide students in the Honors College application are really asking students what about our Honors College is going to provide you with an enhanced academic experience at the University of South Carolina. Out of all of the schools that you can apply to, why is our honors college standing out to you? What research opportunities, abroad opportunities, leadership experiences, networking, etc., that are available to you through the honors college? How is all of that going to make a difference in your personal and professional goals moving forward? It provides you with an opportunity to share really targeted information about your passion and your interest in joining us here at USC, whereas your personal statement on the general application is going to share with us the same story that you're sharing with many other institutions. So it truthfully provides you with the opportunity to be really specific and share with us why you also will be a good fit for USC, while the honors program could also be a good fit for you.
Well, I'm so glad I asked that question because it's very clear that what you're looking for there is for students to demonstrate their understanding of the University of South Carolina. So, students, when you're answering those additional essays where they're looking for you to talk about specifically what it is about USC that appeals to you, it's very important for you to understand that you can't write one essay and just use it for every single college or university in the country. It has to be very specific to the institution that you're applying to. So again, we appreciate that, Marissa. And in terms of institutional goals, how many freshmen do you want to admit And how many overall applications do you receive to consider for that incoming freshman class?
Absolutely. So, our institutional goal for the last couple of years has, and at least for the foreseeable future, will continue to be a continuous increase in student numbers from inquiries all the way to deposits. We are really focusing our team specifically on different and various ways to engage with students and their families, ensuring we are connecting with high school counselors and paying attention to that personal connection and attention that so many students want and need throughout this process. I actually listened to the podcast that my predecessor did with you. I believe it was podcast number 24, if I
That's
remember
correct.
correctly,
That's correct.
a few years ago. And at the time she spoke with you, I recall her saying our application numbers in totality were 42,000.
Hmm.
That was really wild for me to hear because this past admission cycle that we just closed out, we saw approximately 52,000
Wow.
applications.
Wow.
So even in the last 2 or 3 years, I believe, since she's done that podcast with you, our numbers have grown application wise about 10,000, meaning that South Carolina is continuing to become a more popular option for so many students and for so many reasons. This year, we have enrolled roughly about 7,300 students out of those 52,000 applications.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those numbers. And I ask that question because a lot of times students feel that they're a strong candidate, and they are, but unfortunately, they're waitlisted. Obviously, sometimes it happens where you get rejected. And so I just wanted to repeat those numbers again. You received 52,000 overall applications for an admitted freshman class of approximately 7,300. So those numbers are very interesting and I think very helpful to make people understand that there's a lot of things that you do control in the process, but you don't control everything, which leads me to my next question. In state versus out of state students, are there any parameters that you need to follow with that?
So, in state versus out of state, not necessarily parameters. What I will say is we are a state flagship for the University of South Carolina. So, I don't foresee us ever having an out of state percentage that is significantly higher than our in state percentage, as our core goal and one of our focuses as an institution being funded by the state of South Carolina is to ensure educational opportunities for South Carolinians first and foremost. However, with saying that, I will say we have a fantastic out of state percentage. I believe it teeters between 43 and 46%. So we
Great,
do have a
great.
significant out of state population considering we are a state school. But I will also encourage students to take a look at our admissions website on that note. Because we are a state flagship institution, there are a little bit of differentiation in the admissions guidelines or the middle 50% of SAT scores, ACT scores, GPA, and class rank. You will see a difference between in state students versus out of state or non resident students. We use those terms interchangeably. But given the fact that we are a state flagship, you will see some differentiation in those numbers, and it is inherently going to be a little bit more competitive to obtain admission as an out of state student.
Well, we appreciate that. And as you probably know, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. So, Marissa, if there's anything else that you want me to include, obviously just send it to me and we'll make it available in the show notes. So, digging deeper in terms of your overall application review and, the test optional nature came up just a little bit earlier. So, we know that SC is test optional. Can you share, Marissa, the percentage of students that were actually admitted who did not submit their test scores?
So I will say that USC has confirmed that we will remain test optional for the class of rising seniors. However, I encourage younger students, if you do listen to this podcast, to keep an eye on our website as this is a decision that we do revisit every year. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm not able to provide specific percentages of students who were admitted that did not submit or did submit their test scores, but I can share that all students who clearly displayed the academic ability to succeed here, regardless of whether they submitted test scores or not, were provided the opportunity to attend the University of South Carolina. Once again, test scores are just one factor of a very large process. I do encourage students to take a look at that middle 50% that I briefly just mentioned on our website. We do update that year over year to showcase the middle 25 to 75% of students that did submit those scores. And use that to make a judgment, speak to your guidance counselor, lean on those individuals with expertise. We put that out there as guidance in full transparency. And so use the information that is available to you to make the best educated decision for your application and the competitiveness of it that you can.
Well, we appreciate that. And you're right. Check the website for the latest up to date information. I can't emphasize that enough to always check the individual school's website. And I appreciate how you talked about using that mid 50%. So I just want to remind students and their families that the mid 50% is actually skewed nowadays compared to what it used to be, let's say 5 years ago before the pandemic, which means that only students in schools that are test optional, only students that are scoring well are submitting. So if you're looking at the mid 50% range and you're feeling that it's a little high, keep studying, keep working hard, take the SAT, take the ACT, see where you do best. And like Marissa said, work with your counselor to determine whether or not you should submit those scores. So we really appreciate that, Marissa. Was there something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, all I would add is I completely agree with you. We are seeing a lot of skewing of test scores given test optional policies. And I think that is truthful nature across many, many institutions. One thing that I would encourage students to do is take a look at your test scores in comparison to your high school transcript. As John mentioned, your high school transcript is going to be the best indicator of how you will perform in college. Obviously, if you submit test scores, we will be taking a look at them. But truthfully, how you perform in classes is going to be best evaluated by how you performed in classes in high school. If you feel as though your standardized test scores diminish your academic credibility and ability that you've showcased in the classroom, then maybe you don't submit them. But again, utilize whatever transparent data universities do make available to you, such as the information provided by South Carolina, to really weigh whether or not you should submit alongside how you've performed over the last 4 years in your high school.
Well, we really appreciate that. And speaking about the transcript, do you use the student's high school GPA as indicated on their transcript, or do you recalculate using your own metrics? And if so, what do you look at from a student's academic record and how do you evaluate them?
Yes, we do utilize a student's GPA that is on their transcript, and we review each candidate in the context of their high school. So, as previously mentioned, I am the representative for all of New York and Fairfield County, which means I evaluate all of the applications from those areas. I am privy to high school profiles that share with us the data on what is available to students with regards to the courses and the rigor, such as honors, AP, if you have IB coursework available to you. And we want to see that students are challenging themselves in the context of what is available to them, but also while ensuring that they find successful outcomes. When taking a look at a student's transcript, we do pay the most attention. I think I mentioned this previously,
Y-
but to those
Yep.
core subject areas: English, math, sciences, etc. And speaking to a couple of different programs. If you are considering going into nursing or maybe biology, if you're applying to our accelerated MD program, we're really going to be taking a look at some of those sciences, some of those math classes. And even though we only require 3 years of lab sciences, if you're considering some of those programs, maybe you want to consider taking a fourth year to showcase that continued interest. If you are applying to the Darla Moore School of Business, we're definitely going to pay a little bit more attention to those math courses to make sure that quantitatively you can handle that type of coursework. And so while we will focus on the core subject areas, and they all kind of have equal weight, it is something that we will pay a little bit extra attention to when evaluating your transcript if you have indicated a course of interest.
Well, we appreciate that. And it talks to the fact that you review candidates based on the context of their high school. You know about the context of their high school by looking at something called the school profile. Students, we've said it before. If you're not familiar with your high school's school profile, do a Google search, go to the counseling office, and take a look at it. It will help you just to gain more insight in terms of your overall application process. And I also appreciate the fact that when you review, you mentioned it again that you're looking at the core subjects, but you also added that if you're applying to a more specific major or a more competitive major, such as nursing, there are certain courses, for example, in the sciences that you're going to be looking at even closer. Now, unpackaging the overall application even further, the personal essay, which we touched upon earlier, is an opportunity for you to get to know a student better, without meeting them in person, right? It's like a written interview, if you will. So, Marissa, can you share an example of an essay that really stuck with you? And what advice would you give students in terms of what to avoid when working on that personal essay?
Ah, yes. The personal statement is one of my favorite topics to discuss, in part because I personally love writing myself, but
Hmm.
also in part because this is usually the part of the application process that students struggle with the most. And I think there is a lot of growth that can come with that. The average admissions officer has read thousands of essays. I repeat, thousands of essays. So, in order for one to stick in our brains, you know it has to be fantastic. One admissions essay that I read about 2 years ago that stuck with me was creative, funny, meaningful. It talked about a student's family tradition of rolling eggs down her backyard. I will pause. It tied in her connection to her strong Sicilian heritage, her relationship with her family across continent, her competitive nature, while telling me about her values, but adding in a little bit of humor. The concept was unique, and I can genuinely say that I haven't read another essay about egg rolling since that day. And if I do in the future, I will know it's because someone listened to this podcast. I will say that with regards to the process, many students don't know where to start, and that is okay. It should take a lot of brainstorming time to come up with good topics, but just as important as it is to determine good topics, I think it's equally as important to maybe discuss topics to steer clear from. And this process or this reason is multifold. First, you don't know who is reading your essay. While we aim to be as unbiased as possible in this process, you have no idea the personal beliefs, values, or experiences of the person sitting on the other side of that computer. And you also don't know what they have just read that day, what they've just learned. And some of them are unfortunately cliche.
Hmm.
Some topics to steer clear of is maybe restating your resume or your activities list because we have learned that already in another space throughout the common application. The goal is to learn something new about you that we wouldn't learn anywhere else in the application, so there is no need to regurgitate some of that information that's already made available to us. Next is the COVID-19 pandemic. While I absolutely understand that many students were impacted by this experience, it's not unique. So many students experience struggles. So many students learned remotely. There is also a space within the Common Application for you to actually specifically talk about your COVID-19 experience if you had genuine impacts out of that you feel as though you need a counselor to know to evaluate your application in its totality. Another area that I would maybe steer clear from is your first heartbreak or your first high school relationship. Um, Unfortunately, I have had the experience of reading some rather inappropriate essays
Hmm.
about students' relationships or high school drama, and this is simply not the space for that. And while it should sound obvious, steering clear of any unethical activities, even if you took it as a learning experience, this is not the space to disclose that to us. And lastly, while it's not anything to quote unquote steer clear from, I always like to say proceed with caution if you're going to discuss someone as your hero. I look up to my parents. I love my mom and dad. But if I wrote an essay for college, it would be entirely about them. And admissions counselors probably wouldn't learn anything about me because I would spend the whole time talking about how awesome my parents were. And truthfully, we need to know about you. And so, what I will say is there are a lot of times um, where you're going to get stuck in this process. Take a break, take a walk, spend some time brainstorming, talk to others who know a lot about you. And it's okay to start with one topic and go to another and go to another. But if you've just written one draft of an essay and that's what you're going to submit, you've probably done something wrong.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. And I just want to repeat a couple of things. Number one, admissions representative students, they read not hundreds, but thousands of essays, right? So it's very important, as Marissa said, to steer clear from cliche essay topics. And the first piece of advice that you gave was great. Don't just repeat what is already available in other parts of your overall application. So if you're going to talk about How well you did in your courses, that's on the transcript. If you're going to talk about the clubs that you're involved with, that's on your co-curricular or extracurricular sheet. So steer clear from things that are already on your application. Otherwise, it's a missed opportunity. You talked about not mentioning unethical activities, which I think is great advice, but also speaking about someone else, a hero, right? A family member. This has come up a lot in the podcast episodes where students will talk about, for example, a grandparent. 85% of the essay is about the grandparent, and the admissions representative has really learned nothing new about you, the student, which again is a missed opportunity. The personal essay is about you, not them. So just keep that in mind. And again, Marissa, we really appreciate the insights. And of course, the teacher's letters of recommendation are also an important part of the overall application review, as it gives you an opportunity to hear someone else's voice about the student. So, can you share examples of teacher letters of recommendation that didn't add to the overall application? And again, what advice would you give to students in terms of who to ask to write their letter for them?
So, while I'm happy to speak to this topic from my previous experience, we at USC do not consider letters of recommendation as part of our general admissions process, but we do require one letter of recommendation to be submitted alongside a student's honors college application. So, still, if you are applying to our honors college, all of this advice still applies in terms of maybe who to ask for that letter of recommendation. In terms of who to ask, I encourage students to reflect on teachers they establish strong connections with beyond those grades. Teachers they may have had to ask for additional help from, teachers maybe who have witnessed them struggling or going through change. You don't always need to have gotten the best grade in the class for that teacher to be the right person to write your letter of recommendation. You want it to be someone who knows you beyond that grade, knows your personality, maybe knows what you're involved in outside of that classroom. Of course, it's great if they can speak to your participation and collaboration in the classroom, since a lot of college coursework does involve group work and working with others, your dedication to your academics or bettering yourself. And if it is possible, it is helpful when a student's recommender is in a subject area that is close to a student's intended course of study, but by no means is that a requirement. Letters of recommendation that don't usually prove useful are ones that simply reiterate students' grades or GPA, state that they were a part of X, Y, and Z class and that they engaged in X, Y, and Z learning topics. And one of the reasons it's really important to really reflect and think about who you want to ask is because teachers can decline your request to write letters of recommendations. They might do this if they don't feel as though they know you well enough, if they've received too many requests, or if they don't feel like they have enough good things to say about the student. There have been times where I have read letters of recommendation that have shed light on negative experiences with the student. And while the student may have performed well in that class, maybe they weren't the best class member. So it's really crucial to think, how did I perform? How did I act? Who knows me best? Reflect on those questions and also ask early. Do not wait until the end of September to go up to someone and ask for a letter of recommendation. Chances are they've already been asked a variety of times, and you're getting pretty late in that process.
Well, I love that advice. Ask early. Students, you should definitely ask in the late spring at the very latest before going to that summer vacation. Now, you talked about support services a little bit earlier, Marissa, but can you elaborate on the support services available at the University of South Carolina, such as academic advising, mental health resources, and even career counseling? To help students, of course, continue to be successful once they're on your campus. This is a topic that's very important to so many students and their families.
Yes, of course. Every student comes to the university with unique circumstances, whether it be academic, cultural, physical, emotional. Our initiatives that we have at the University of South Carolina are designed to provide essential resources to support the individual needs of our students throughout their entire time at USC. Our services and programs can be accessed online, but also at a variety of our campus locations, not just our flagship campus of Columbia. But altogether, Our division is responsible for more than 30 different university offices, and they manage dozens of facilities across campus within student affairs and academic support. I could truly go on for hours about all that is offered here to serve our students.
Mm.
So I just want to highlight a few resources specifically. But if this is something that any parent or student wants to learn more about, so many resources online, but also please feel free to ask any of your admissions representatives, whether you are visiting in person and you want to have a conversation, or if it's something you want to chat on the phone or Zoom about, so you know whether or not USC could be a viable fit for your child. In terms of mental health, we have a trained staff of mental health professionals that are there to provide emotional wellness services to all USC students. They provide everything from group counseling, a 24-hour helpline, couples counseling, community support, teletherapy, telepsychiatry, and they will also refer students to local providers if they feel as though that is the best course of action. They also offer mindfulness programs, and we have a calm oasis space in the Center for Health and Wellbeing. And beyond this, they also offer wellness coaching, bystander intervention, and so much more. We also have our Student Disability Resource Center, in which our team empowers students with disabilities and collaborates, coordinates efforts, and consults with various faculty, staff, and campus partners to ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to all education and university life. This covers everything from meal plan modifications for students with allergies, housing accommodations, temporary conditions or injuries, to students that register with us for long term support. This office provides academic accommodations to students with a variety of documented disabilities, and students who register do not need to re register every single semester. The website lays out that registration process very clearly, as well as the variety of accommodations available. But families should know that they can always reach out to the Student Disability Resource Center and ask any specific questions that they might have. I want to talk about academic advising for a moment. Obviously, you are coming to school to get a degree, so you should know that there are the resources to support you along the way. And there is so much offered through our University Academic Advising Center, all aimed at supporting undergraduate student success. Other than comprehensive 4-year academic advising, our Academic Advising Center is home to the Office of Exploratory Advising for those students that maybe come in undecided, and academic coaching, curriculum management, and faculty support, transfer advising, because we do have a significant number of transfer students that come to USC, and the Office of Student Success Technology as well. So, whether it is a student trying to graduate early, a student wants to change majors to something else at USC, or whether a student is preparing for orientation, the staff in the Academic Advising Office is truly exceptional at what they do and always places student support at the forefront. Students are required to meet with their academic advisors each fall and spring before they register for their next semester classes. And they are required to meet with students at orientation as well to create their first year class schedule. So, for all of the students wondering, if I come to USC, when am I going to create my schedule? You will do that at orientation with your academic advisor. There is also a peer writing support center and peer tutoring available across various disciplines offered through academic advising as well. To turn tides a little bit and talk about career services, we have three career services centers on campus. We have a general university career center, a career center specific to our Darla Moore School of Business, and a career center dedicated to the College of Engineering and Computing. Each career center offers in person and virtual appointments that cover everything from career exploration, resume and cover letter writing, internship and job search strategies, but they also offer free headshots, professional clothing, truly a one stop shop for all things to support students along their professional development journey. The Career Center also offers a variety of online resources as well that students can access, including Handshake, which is a comprehensive online database that contains all of the internships and full-time jobs that employers have sent to the University of South Carolina. with the intention of wanting USC students to apply for those jobs. We have something called Big Interview, an online practice interview resource that allows students and alumni actually to conduct various types of interviews on their own time. We have a database called Gamecock Grad Stats, a site that allows USC students to view post graduation career paths where some of their students may have gotten jobs previously, as well as some of the most common places that students in their major might go to work post graduation. So, alongside the career services, we also have our office for graduate and pre professional advising, which assists students on the pre med, pre health, and pre law tracks. This office serves thousands of students at USC who plan to attend professional school following their undergraduate graduation from the University of South Carolina, and it really aims to help them prepare for that process. Whether it is application assistance, graduate school college fairs, MCAT, LSAT preparation, this is an extremely beneficial office that will help students to truthfully understand the graduate school application process for whatever graduate field it is that they want to dive further into. I know at the beginning of this, I said I could talk for hours about everything available, and I feel like I kind of did, but I didn't even cover everything. There is so much support available to our students. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have the number one ranking for first year experience among public colleges. And I think that all of these resources really attribute to that number one ranking, simply seeing all of the support services that we put into our students. And these are just growing more and more every year.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you could have continued because, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, you truly have something for everyone. And I'm going to just summarize. You're very mindful in the admissions office to admit students that you know will continue to be successful once they're on your campus because you're looking at their academic record, you're looking at their co curricular record. But when they're on your campus, you mentioned so many different support services that, like you said, it's too much to mention in one podcast episode. But I'm also impressed with the fact that you're very mindful of helping them even post graduation, whether it's with career or graduate school. So again, we really appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. All of that encompasses one of the reasons why you are number one in your first year experience. So that was an awesome overview. And again, I repeat, any links that you want to share with the students and their families, just send them to me. And of course, we'll make them available in the show notes. Now, Marissa, I was also curious, what are some future plans and long-term visions for the University of South Carolina in terms of its growth, development, and any other new initiatives?
Yes. So there's always new and exciting things going on at USC. First, there will be the addition of a new Bachelor's of Science in Applied Sports Psychology and Counseling
Awesome.
coming next year, coming next spring in 2025. I think this is going to be a highly sought after program because we already have such a strong foundation in exercise science, as well as one of the top five programs in sport management. So I think this is going to be a really great addition for students that are interested in that field. We also recently renovated our nursing space, tripling it in size. Nursing is one of our most competitive programs, something that we receive many applications for. I think that our students are going to really love this new space. I was fortunate enough to tour our I guess now older nursing simulation labs, and the resources and the real life experiences that they have for our students are truly incredible. I know why our nursing students now graduate and become so successful. And we are also launching a first generation center in August, which will serve as a living learning community for first generation students. This is something they can indicate in their housing application, and it will just provide additional support for those first generation students coming into campus, coming to college for the first time, being the first student in their family. So anything they need, but also being surrounded by students who are really going through that process themselves for the first time as well. So they can kind of feel like they have community and camaraderie. From a little bit of a broader perspective, the university remains committed to enhancing student access and affordability for all students, including low income, first generation, international, as well as underrepresented students. We also aim to strengthen our very lengthy list of student support services that I just shared, including academic and career advising, in order to reduce barriers to retention and graduation. And lastly, as a tier one research institution, we will always continue to recruit and retain research active faculty that will bring new projects, support students, and really continue to bring our research centers to life.
Well, that's awesome, and the future absolutely looks so bright with a lot of growth. And when a university is growing, that is a testament to the great work that you're doing both on your campus and beyond to make sure that more and more students continue to apply and want to attend. I have to ask, is there a question that I haven't asked so far because we're coming to the end, or a topic that I didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now?
I don't think so. I think you've really covered everything. This has been a lot of comprehensive questions diving into various parts of the process, but I also enjoy being able to speak to different aspects of our campus life and different resources that are available to students. I think that when students think of the University of South Carolina, especially from the territory that I manage, New York and Fairfield County, it's a large institution and it's far away. And some students or some families may feel that they might not be able to get the resources that their student needs to be successful, but also enjoy their time at USC. And I hope that through some of what I shared today with you, John, that I have squashed many of those concerns. I mean, I didn't even get to speak to everything we have available to students here, but I have been continuously amazed by everything that I have learned throughout my time at USC and things that I will undoubtedly continue to learn throughout my time managing a territory and working at admissions here. I'm excited to see this university grow. I'm excited to hopefully get another women's basketball win. I was at a college fair when that happened, so that was so exciting. Some students were streaming it with me. I hope to have that experience again next spring. But like you said, I think the future is looking very bright for USC as well as the next class of students.
Well, I couldn't agree. And this has been an amazing conversation. Thanks to you, Marissa. And, the reason why we put these episodes together is so that students and their families could listen to these conversations. And then when they see you, whether it's on campus or at a college fair, hopefully it prompts them to come up with better follow up questions to help them decide whether or not the University of South Carolina, in this case, is that right fit for them. So, unfortunately, it does lead us to the last question, which is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Ah, yes. Okay. So, the top 3 pieces of advice that I would give, I could give a lot of advice about this process, um, but one of the first ones I will speak to is this can be a very stressful and overwhelming process for both the students and their parents, especially if this is the first child you have going through this process. And I do think, we just touched upon student support resources. It's really important to keep a student's mental health in mind throughout this process. I always encourage parents to be as respectful as they can of their students' boundaries and even identify spaces or times where this topic should really just be off limits, whether it's the dinner table, the car, their bedroom. Give them space to talk about other things. They still have homework. They still want to see their friends. They still are going to go to sporting games or play competitive sports. This will likely be the topic of conversation every day until the end of their senior year. And sometimes it can just be too much. So give space, give them grace, and allow them to also come to you when they want to talk about it. So that would be the first piece of advice that I would give. The next piece of advice that I would give is there is a lot of information that is shared on social media sites, parent groups, things of that nature. And just because something is true for one student does not make it inherently true for all students. Every student and their applications are unique, and we treat them as such. If you have questions, I really encourage you to seek out the expertise of your college admissions representative or your high school guidance counselor, your college counselor. They and we are the best sources of information. Our office prides itself on quick communication and also personalized approach. And there is a regional or dedicated representative for every territory. So if any parent or student is listening to this and wants to either connect with me or their assigned representative at USC, simply type in Meet the Rep University of South Carolina into Google. It'll be the first thing that pops up. We are always happy and willing to have a conversation. And the last piece of advice that I would give, not that I want to end on this note, but
Hmm.
one of the most difficult and uncomfortable conversations a student and a parent will have with each other throughout this process is the financial aspect of paying for college. And I think this is really important to have sooner rather than later in the process so students know what is feasible for them, what their parents can or are willing to contribute to their college experience, and based off that, what colleges are financially viable options for you. I see it all the time, especially managing an out of state territory where students have to actively travel to come to college. Many students fall in love with USC, but once the numbers are crunched, sometimes it just doesn't make sense for the family. The sooner the parents and the students are on the same page with this, the smoother sailing the decision making process will be for everybody. I encourage you not to be afraid to talk to a financial aid officer or ask an admissions representative, whether it's about tuition and fees or what your scholarship process looks like. We know firsthand how expensive attending college can be. I have flown back and forth to USC many times from
Hmm.
Connecticut. I know what those flights look like. We would never encourage students or families to make unwise financial decisions, and we are here to be as upfront with that information as we possibly can. So, I think those would be my three key pieces of advice that I would really want students and parents to digest after listening to this podcast. Maybe you've heard some of this before, but if not, I hope to provide some new advice. Ultimately, we are not here to make this process harder.
Hmm.
We are here to be transparent and honest and hopefully be your support system as well.
Well, you provided tremendous advice, not only in this last question, but throughout this entire podcast episode. Amazing advice, tremendous insight into your application review, and all of the great things, again, that the University of South Carolina offers, not only academically, not only on your campus, but beyond. Marissa, I can't thank you enough. I hope you're going to come back and do a follow up episode in the future. Thank you so much.
Of course, John, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, feel free to reach out, both you and anyone listening, with any further questions about the University of South Carolina. And lastly, go Gamecocks.
Go Gamecocks. And to everyone out there, one last thing to say good luck with the college process. Take care, all, and best wishes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP.
I want to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert. Sean, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, John. Just wanted to do a quick shout out for an amazing deal that we have for college admissions process podcast listeners. We're offering 30% off all Prep Expert SAT and ACT courses and tutoring. It's live online. We've got the best score improvement guarantees in the industry. You'll get taught by 99 percentile instructors. And you can save 30% off when you go to the show notes of the College Admissions Process podcast. Grab your discount code for 30% off and click the link in the show notes.
Thank you, Sean. So great to have you again. And to everyone out there, please note that if you make a purchase through any of our affiliate links, the podcast gets a commission. But rest assured that we would only promote products that we believe in and feel would benefit our listeners. Thank you all, and best wishes.